glad you're here. It's not easy doing the preliminary service by myself.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Got it.
I see Sheldon's not here.
We're live. Yeah, no, I think he's okay. Rebecca told me he wouldn't be here.
Oh, okay. Well, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
And howdy, all you internet people.
We're good.
It's good to have you back.
Yeah, don't mention the word.
What'd you say? Oh, yeah. It's good to have you here with us.
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
All right, then. It's been a little while, so let me just find my bearings. We're going to start on page 65, if nothing else has changed. Okay. With a series of blessings, you say, they used to say as you did certain things in the morning. I know, like, my second wife used to say, right after she said, Pokeach Ivrim, that opens the eyes of the blind, she put in her contact lenses. So there's all kinds of things you can do. Page 65. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sech v'bina להבחין בין יום ובין לילה. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שעשני בצלמו. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שעשני ישראל. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שעשני בן חורים. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish sharumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokach haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten li'ayv koach. Udnenu ayom chol yom l'chenu l'chesed l'rachmim b'einechu b'einei kol ro'enu v'tigvilenu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomer chasadim tovim li'amo Yisrael. And we will continue on page 72. A psalm for the Sabbath day. Hayom Yom Shabbat Kodesh Shebo Hayu Levim Omrim Beit HaMikdash. You got a tune for us?
Yeah, let's go to the bottom 4 lines. Tzadik adam ha'yifra ki geres ba'levanon yizgeh shitulim b'veit Adonai b'chatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenun b'seiva dishenim v'rananim
continue on page 81. Mizmor Shir Hanukkah Tabayit LeDavid. הפקת מסבירים החולי, פיתחת סחיפת העזרני שמחה, למען יזמך כבוד ולא ידום, אדוני אלוהי לעולם עודך. הושיע את עמך. Well, not quite. So we're going to continue on page 83, the beginning of Pesukei de Zimra. It's traditional to rise. Baruch She'amar v'haya ha'olam Baruch Hu Baruch Hoseh v'reshit Baruch Omer v'yoseh Baruch Hoseh v'mekayem Baruch merachem ha'aretz Baruch merachem al habriot Baruch Mishalem Zachar Tov L'Reav Baruch Chai La'ad V'Kayam L'Netzach Baruch Bodeh U'Matzil Baruch Shema Yachid Chai Ha'olomim Melech Mishabachim for that Shemo HaGadol Baruch Atah Adonai Melech Mehulal Batishbachot. And you may be seated. We're going to continue on page 85 down at the bottom. Romimu Adonai Eloheinu V'ishtachavu Har Kodsho Romimu Adonai Eloheinu V'ishtachavu Har Kodsho Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romimu Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romimu Adonai Eloheinu V'ishtachavu Le'ar Kodsho Romimu Adonai Eloheinu V'ishtachavu Le'ar Kodsho. We're going to move ahead to page 86 with a 10-word sentence. Why is it important to have a 10-word sentence? Because Jews are not supposed to count each other. Something bad happened to King David when he tried taking a census. A big plague hit, so we don't try to count. Some people go not one, not two, not three to make sure they have a minyan, or you can just assign a person per word in a 10-word sentence. Hoshia et amecha, uvorach et nachalatecha, ureim v'nasem ad olam, 10 words, and we only have not quite 10 people here yet. Hoshia et amecha, uvorach et nachalatecha, ureim v'nasem ad ha'olam. Hoshia et amecha, uvarech et nachalatecha, ureim v'nasem ad ha'olam. And we will continue on page 88. It's acrostic, it's in alphabetical order. We're going down to the mem. Mi ha'ish ha'chafetz chayim ohev yamim liroto nitzor leshoncha meira u'svatecha medaber mirma sor meira ve'aseto Bagi shalom v'radfehu Mi ha'ish echafetz chayim continue on page 92. Where are we?
You can choose anywhere you want to go.
Okay, let's do the last 8 lines.
Excellent.
The last 8 lines on page 92. V'natan artzam linachala.
That's 6 lines.
That's 6 lines. It's an even number. 1, 2, 3. Oh, right.
Yeah, it's tricky at the bottom because they break the paragraphs.
You know, I used to be good at math.
Yeah,
I'll have you
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I got a 720 on my math board. But counting to 8, not so good.
Yeah.
L'sichon melech Amori
ki le'olam chazdo v'log melech Bashan ki le'olam chazdo
Artzam lenachala ki le'olam chazdo
Nachala
L'Yisrael avdo
ki le'olam chazdo
שבשפלנו זכר לנו כי לעולם חסדו ויפרקנו מצערנו כי לעולם חסדו נותן לחם לכל בשר כי לעולם חסדו עוד לאל השמיים כי לעולם חסדו. And on page 94, we did this already. So we're going to page 96. We'll do the first couple of lines of Ashrei out loud, and then we'll read it quietly, and we'll say it out loud at the end.
We do the whole Ashrei?
We do it later.
Yeah. We'll do it this way. Ashrei Yoshvei Ve'itecha Odeh Halelucha Sehela
Ashrei Ha'am shekach lo, Ashrei Ha'am sh'Adonai Eloham.
Tila leDavid Armim Chalai Melech B'chashmo. Tila Adonai da behevi vivarech abasar shem kosher le'olam va'ed v'anachnu nevarech ya me'ata v'yad olam. Hallelujah.
And at the very bottom of page 97, second line up. Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Zion, Dor vador, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. On page 99, 5 lines from the bottom. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, ki nizkav shemo levado, hodo al eretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren li'amo, tila lechol chasidav, livnei Yisrael, am kirovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. And on page 100, in the middle. Hallelujah, 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 b'kodsho, hallelujah, b'rkiyahu, hallelujah, v'gvurotav, hallelujah, kirov gudlo, hallelujah, take a shofar, hallelujah, Benego v'chinor, hallelujah, b'tov u'macho, hallelujah, b'miri v'ugav, hallelujah, v'tziltzilei shama, hallelujah, v'tziltzilei shruah, Kol HaNeshama Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Kol HaNeshama Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. And on page 101, it's traditional to stand. We're going to take the first paragraph 3 lines down. L'cho Adonai hagidula v'hagivura v'hatiferet v'hanetzav v'hahod ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz L'cho Adonai ha'malacha v'haminaseh L'cho l'rosh. Atahu Adonai ha'Elohim asher b'charta ba'Avram v'chotzeto me'or kasdim v'samta shemo Avraham v'matata levavo ne'eman lefanecha v'karot imo habrit. V'hayam b'kata lifnehem v'yavru b'toch hayam b'yabasha v'yavrotfehem ishlachta b'imsalot k'mo even b'mayim azim. Page 102. Vayosh Adonai bayom hahu et Yisrael mi'ad Mitzrayim v'yar Yisrael et Mitzrayim me'al sfat hayam v'yar Yisrael et hayad gedolah asher asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim v'yiru ha'am et Adonai v'yaminu b'Adonai u'v'Moshe avdo. Az yashir Moshe u'v'nei Yisrael et ashir hazot l'Adonai v'yomeru lemor ashir l'Adonai ki ga'o ga'a susra v'evora rama v'yam aziv zimraya v'yehi li lishua Ze'eli ve'anvehu Elohei aviv aromenu Adonai ish milchama Adonai shemo Markavot paro Keloi haravayam Uv'mivchar sharisha Tubu v'yam suv. מי כמוך בעלים אדוני, מי כמוך נעזר בקודש, נראתי ולא ספר. כי אדוני המלוכה ומשה בגויים, ויעלו משה מהר ציון לשפוט את הר עשיו. והייתה לאדוני המלוכה, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. We're continuing on page 104. נשמת כל חי, תברך את שמך אדוני אלוהינו. In the middle section. Ilufinu male shira, shira kayamu, shonenu rina kamon galal. Ilufinu male shira, Male shira kayamu shonenu rina kamon galal. Ilufinu male shira kayamu shonenu rina kamon galal. Kamon galal. pick it up on page 105, at the end of the first paragraph, 3 lines up at the little square. נהלכו ונשבחו ונפרחו ונברך את שם קודשך, כאמור לדוד, ברכי נפשי את אדוני, וכל קרובי את שם קודשו. האל בתעצומות עוזך, הגדול בכבוד שמך, הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורתך. המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא. Page 105, third paragraph down, שוכנד.
שוכנד מרום וקדוש שמו.
שוכנד מרום וקדוש שמו.
וכתוב, רדנו צדיקים אדוני, וישרים נפתילה. בבישרים נדלה, ובדברי צדיקים נתברך. ובלשון חסידים נתרחמה, בקרב קדושים נקדש, ובמחלות ובבאות עמך בית ישראל. להודות לשבח, ולמאים להלל, לברך להכניס, על כל דברי שיות ותשבחות. David ben Ishai, Avdecha Meshichecha.
You are invited to rise, page 106, Yishtabach.
Yishtabach, Shimcha Adon Malkinu, El Melech HaDabosh Ma'ametz Kulachana, Birachad Vadod Me'adav Yadolam, Baruch Adonai.
Baruch Baruch Shemo.
El Melech Ladish Bachad El Ahodon Adon Nivlot Habachim Leshivrim Melech Elchei Olamim.
Amen. Anybody out in the lobby? Your uncle's, he's coming back. Okay, so hang on.
That brings us to odd, I think. To odd.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, but in the meantime, while he's coming, someone else may come.
Yeah.
So we're on hold for just a moment due to liturgical difficulties beyond our control, but stay tuned.
I'm looking for the luach, that purple luach. I can just keep it under here, but it's not. Not that I necessarily.
You want to use mine?
Well, when it comes time to the Torah reading, no, you need to call the pages. I know what I'm doing. It's maybe like the others that I That's kind of weird. Who would take it?
I could bring mine with me, but I knew the one was here, so I didn't.
Yeah, right. I do the same
And I'm
thing.
looking, I don't see it here. Oh, well.
I haven't been here.
Yeah. I remember you got one for the side of the bima.
Yep.
And then it disappeared, and then Ken Levin said, "Oh, I have one," and I lent it to us.
Why do they keep disappearing?
What? I don't know.
It's not like they're the best-selling book on the planet.
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, maybe that's why it's so rare. They
Right. It's
my
the-
rare book collection.
Right. Like a JTS.
No problem. We'll do it. Here comes Gail. I think we got it when the others arrive.
I don't see the announcements here.
Here's this thing.
Oh, is that what we're using now? Good.
Would you need this?
No, I got one of those.
Okay.
So if anybody watching from home was here in the last few weeks and took home with them, by accident, I'm sure, a purple luach book, a spiral-bound guide to what we do up here, please bring it back.
The Wilcox arrived, so
Okay.
I see them in the back, yeah.
Why don't you see where your uncle is? And bring anybody in that you can. Drag them if you have to. Tony doesn't count.
There's so many announcements, they have to put things in super small print.
Yeah, that's perfect for our crowd.
Yeah.
Aha. And we need to be
The
nice.
funny thing is, it's so crowded, then right here they say, if you need to place anything in the announcements, they should have some comma, please don't.
Right. Think carefully.
Yeah.
Next week I'll bring a big magnifying glass.
Yeah, yeah.
Doo-dum, doo-dum, doo-dum.
I think we're good now.
All right. We're on page 106, at the bottom of the page, the Chatzi Kaddish.
Kedag v'kadash mehiravaha
Amen.
v'yomah d'v'racharuti v'amichmachutei
Chayecha
v'chayecha v'yomecha v'chayidecha b'eit Yisrael b'gala b'gala v'mizmar kari v'brel
Amen.
Yesh me'irav mevorach li'olam olam me'almaya Yitbarach Yitbarach v'yishtabach V'yitbarach v'yitma v'yitnasei v'yithadar v'yithale v'yithalav Shemiri kudeshah
Brichu.
V'yila mikol birlachada v'shirahada Tushbecha kavenechemada Da'amirat mi'alma v'imrel Amen.
Page 107. You're invited to stay standing for the Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
You may be seated. Please join me at the beginning of the first of two blessings before the Shema. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yosei or v'orei choshech osei shalom v'orei et hakol. Continue to the bottom of the page silently.
Irkegecha v'inzuladecha, Eves b'decha midomelach. Irkegecha Adonai Eloheinu olam hazeh, V'inzulalcha malkin l'chai olam haba. Eves b'decha go'aleinu l'mod ha'mashiach, V'yenu melech ha'mosheina, l'chiyat ha'metim.
Page 108, El Adon.
El Adon al kol ha'masim baruch mevorach v'viko neshama gavo v'tuvo malei olam dahad v'vona sovimoto ha'mid gael chayot ha'kodesh v'ned ha'mecha ha'voram ha'mecha v'chud u'mishor livnei chiso chesed v'rachamim livnei chevodo Tovim me'orot shebara Eloheinu Yitzaram Bevina uvaskel Kach ha'gvura nadan bahem V'yam Bekerlev Tevel, Maleim Zeim, Vigim Noga, Naeziv Amechalalam, Semechim Beseitam, Misazim Bevoam, Azim Be'yehim Aritzom Konam, Pierre Bechavod, Noni Melishmot Salaverina, Vezeter Machudo, Karal Hashemesh Vayizrachor, Vavigin Surat Havanam, Shevach Nonim Lo, Kosev Amarom, Tiferet V'Gedolah, Shvavi V'Yovadim V'Chayot HaKodesh.
We read the top two paragraphs on page 109 to ourselves. We're on page 110.
Kulam huvim, kulam birurim, kulam giborim, kulam osim im avrabison kolam, kulam bochim bihem, bikdush avidahara, bishira ovezim aham evach meshabachim, umfarim arezim, umagdishim umahamichim, et shem ha'el hamelech hagadol, hagibarad ha'gadol. Binachad huach, Safar Wavnima, Kiddush Aklaham Gechadani Yarim Bira, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvahot Melach Kivodo, Avadi Vechayot HaKodesh Brahash Gado, Binazim Lematzravim, Umadam Jochim V'Yomrim, Baruch Kavod, Adonai Mikomo. El Baruch Nimiot Yidei Inu Lamech Chavak HaMazmiot Amero V'Tishko Shmir Giru V'Adapro. V'Chadash Al Tzion Da'ir V'Nizgech L'Lan D'Meira Le'aram. V'Chadash Al Tzion Da'ir V'Nizgech L'Lan D'Meira Le'aram. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMe'ara.
Page 111, our second blessing, Ahava Rabbah.
Ahava Rabbah Avdanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chemil Agdala V'Zera, Chamad Aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, B'Havur Avodeinu, Shebarchu V'cha, Shebarchu V'cha, Avinu Malkeinu. V'tilav Leim Chukei Chayim, K'dichanenu Lamedeinu, Avinu HaBarach Merachim Rachim Aleinu, V'dein B'libeinu Le'havim, V'yavinu Haskil Lishma, V'lemodu L'lavin, Lishmar V'la'ason, V'lechayim El Kol Divrei, Talmud Toratecha, B'yahava, V'ha'yireinu B'toratecha, V'davek Libeinu B'mitzvotecha, V'yachil Livavinu, V'yachava U'lira Et Shemecha, V'la'nevosh, V'ya'olam Ba'ed, V'la'nevosh, V'ya'olam Ba'ed, Ki v'shem Kodecha, Hagadu B'Adora B'Adamu Nagila, V'nizmecha Nagila, V'nizmecha V'yeshuatecha. V'havinu V'shalom,
Sit.
Me'ariba Kanivoda, Lichenu, Kamimeu, Le'yarzeinu, Ki Helebo El Yeshudana, Uvahanu Vacharida Mikal Havilada, Vigi Avidanu, Lesimcha Hagado, Selah, Beth Emet, Lihoda Lecha, Liachedecha, Ve'yahava. Baruch Adonai, Habachir B'yama Yisrael, B'yahava.
Amen.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'yahavita, Hit Adonai Elohecha, B'chol levavecha, v'chol nafshecha, v'chol me'odecha, v'hayu advarim ha'ile, Asher Anochi mitzavecha, Yom alevavecha, V'shinadam levanecha, v'divarta bam, V'shivnecha b'vitecha, V'lechtecha b'derech, V'shachbecha v'kulmecha, V'kishartam le'od al yadecha, V'yudodavot b'neinecha, V'chedav v'dam, Hamzuzot b'techa,
The next two paragraphs to ourselves. Jesus.
Adonai Elohechem Emet, V'yatziv Nachum Hashem. Ziduvadav Geham Ushma Geham, V'chisalach Al Malchutah, V'menadulad Geyamet, V'brachem Imel.
You may release the tzitzi.
Mahakenu melech avodeinu, koleinu kohel avodeinu, yotzenu tzoyeshuadeinu, chodeinu matzileinu, me'olam shemecha, eino yivzu latecha.
Page 114.
Ezrat avodeinu, atahu me'olam, aginu Moshe, livnei v'achim b'chol dor v'dor b'rum, olam Moshe. Emet, 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 atahu rishon. Emet, 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 v'atahu acharon. Uvi baladecha ilanu melech, melech oelu Moshiach. Uvi baladecha ilanu melech, melech oelu Moshiach. Slime God, Tzad, on the bit of it. Join me in the middle of the page.
You're invited to rise.
Nedar b'kodesh, Nora dilan, Osei v'eleh. Michamacha b'elim Adonai, Michamacha nedar b'kodesh, Nora Shbechul ge'olim l'shimcha, az vadayah v'yachad kula, udu v'him l'chuvi Mecha, Yehuda Israel, Go Aleinu, Adonai Tzvaot Shemo Gidosh, Yisrael Baruch Adonai,
Baruch Shemo.
Ga Yisrael.
The Amidah said silently and standing from page 115, skipping page 116 and going on from 117 to 120. It's a silent Amidah. You can add whatever's in your heart to whatever's on the page. The reader's repetition of the Amidah begins on page 115a, and you may remain seated if you want to be.
Baruch Adonai
Baruch
Eloheinu v'Elokei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Hayel HaGadol HaGiboy v'Hanora Elyon Gomel Chazadim Tovim v'Gonei HaKol V'Zacher Chasdei Avochot V'Mevi Goel Livnei Bneihem Man Shemo B'Yahava Melech Hazel Moshiach U'Magen Baruch Adonai
Baruch Shemo
Magin Avraham.
Amen.
Hadagi boy le'olam Adonai. Mechimidim Adar of the Hoshia. Majiv Avruach Marina Gashem. Mecha Kel Chayim Bechesed. Mechayim Eidim Birachamim Rabim. Samech Navlim Verovech Olim. Umadir Asurim. Umekayim Emunada. Lishenei Avar. Michava Givra. Umida Melach. Melech Meimid. Umichayim. Umazmiach Yeshua. V'neman Adalachayot Medim. Baruch Adonai. B'chei Hameti.
Amen. You are invited to rise, page 116.
Nikadesh et Shimcha ba'olam, Gishim Shemach Gishim Odam Vishmei Maharav, Kagadu v'yad Nevi'echa, V'karazel ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivaot, Melech ha'aretz Givodo. Az Mikar Az Gadol, Adir V'chazak V'zivgo, Minasim L'umatzira, V'im L'umatam Baruch Yomeru, Baruch Yivod Adonai V'im Golmo. V'im Kam Chamakid U'Tovia, V'tim L'chaleinu L'g'mechagim Anachnu Lach, Madahidim Lach B'Zigon, B'karav B'yameinu, L'lam B'Tishkod. Tidkadav V'tidkadash, B'dach Yerushalayim Mirlecha, L'dor V'dor, L'nitzach Nitzachim. Ve'einu Tirena, Tirena Malchutecha, Kadavar Ha'amor, B'shirei Uzecha. Ve'einu Tirena, Tirena Malchutecha, Kadavar Ha'amor, B'shirei Uzecha. Hayedei David, Hayedei David, Mashiach Tzidkecha. Hayedei David, Hayedei David, Mashiach Tzidkecha. Yimlach Adonai le'olam, Elohim Tzion l'dor v'dor, hallelujah. L'dor v'Adonai Gidgad le'hecha, L'netzach netzach v'neshadecha nagdish, Shivchacha l'hen mipinu b'shalom v'hen, Ki hamelech gadol v'kadosh, Ata, Baruch Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
We're on page 117. You may be seated.
Yismach Moshe b'matnat Zelgagi evet ne'eman Kaharatalo Keleati v'heret bero Shonatata b'yamda levanecha Har Sinai Shnei luchot avadim Orid b'yachado V'chaduf b'hem Shemirat shahabat V'chaduf b'hem Shemirat shahabat V'chaduf b'hem Shemirat shahabat Chikatu v'toratecha V'shamru v'nei Yisrael Et ha-shabat L'asot et ha-shabat V'dadam b'rit olam V'hini Reuven v'nei Yisrael Oti le'olam B'nei Reuven b'nei Yisrael Odi le'olam Kishishet Yavim Asa Adonai vayom hashivi, Shabbat vayinavash. Below the Tado, Adonai Eloheinu, l'gerot Eloheinu, chauto, malkin lavdi v'zilim, v'gam duchato, lo'eshkin v'rehilim, Kil Yisrael, Hamcha hanidato, v'yava, v'zayako, v'asher b'macharda, ahami kadosh yeshivi, kolam yizbevi, danu mitzuvecha, v'ashvi ratita bo v'kidashdo, chemra dihabimo, togarada, Zeicher Masri Bereshit Eloheinu Elohi Avotenu Ritzevim Nochadeinu Kadesheinu B'mitzvotecha V'tein Chelkeinu B'toratecha Sabeinu B'tzuvecha V'samcheinu B'shvatecha V'taher Libeinu Libeinu Lovdecha Beth Emet V'hanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu B'Yachova U'v'Razah Shabbat Kodecha V'yadu Chova Yisrael Mekadesh Mekadesh Shemecha Baruch Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Page 118.
Ritzei, Adonai Elohim, B'macha Yisrael, V'tefel Adonai
V'ashiv.
V'dovotali, V'betecha. Ritzei, Adonai Elohim, B'macha Yisrael, V'tefel Adonai
V'ashiv.
V'dovotali, V'betecha.
Utfilatam.
B'yava, Deko B'beratzon, V'liratzon Damid Avodat Yisrael Lamecha, Utfilatam. B'yava, Deko B'beratzon, V'liratzon Damid Avodat Yisrael Lamecha. Ritzei. B'techesena Einenu, B'shuv Chalitz Yom Rachamim Barach, Adonai.
Baruch Shemo.
Amakadesh Echinado L'Tzion.
Amen.
Modim
Modim
Anachnu.
Anachnu.
Hatov Gilachal Rachamecha, V'merachim Gilachad Avakasadecha, Melacham Givinu La.
Page 119 in the middle.
V'yahok Lamid Brach V'yirmam Shimcha Makenet Amid Le'olacham V'ayed V'chol Chayim Yadu Chazela V'yalu Shimcha B'yamet V'yashvaten V'zvateinu Zela Baruch Adonai
Shemo.
Adonai Shimcha Lachal Le'odo
Amen.
Eloheinu V'Elohi Avotenu Baruch Rabbaka HaMishlech Esed BaTorah Dividing Moshe Avlecha Ami Piaronu Banav Kaim Am Gnoshecha Gamur Yivarech Adonai Yishmerecha
Kein Yiratzon.
Yair Adonai Baravilecha Vichuneka
Kein Yiratzon.
He's Adonai Baravilecha V'yasehim Lecha Shalom
Kein Yiratzon. 120.
Sim,
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 Sim.
Sim Shalom,
Shalom.
Sim Shalom Tova U'Racham Sim,
Sim.
Sim,
Sim.
Sim Shalom Tova U'Racham Chayin V'Chesed Rachamim Aleinu V'Yal Chai Yisrael Amecha V'Acheinu Aveinu Kulanu Ke'echad B'Yor Panecha Sim Shalom Sim
Sim.
Sim
Sim.
Sim Shalom Sim Shalom Dava U'Racham Sim
Sim.
Sim
Sim.
Sim Shalom Dova U'Racham Ki v'arbanecha nadada aladu Adonai Eloheinu Torah Reading v'yahavat chesed u'tzedakah v'racha v'rachamei v'chai v'choy v'shalom Sim shalom sim shalom sim shalom dava u'racha sim shalom dava u'racha v'tohor beinecha levorich edamecha Yisrael v'chol etu v'chol shah v'shlamecha sim shalom sim shalom dava u'racha sim shalom dava u'veracha Baruch atah Adonai hamivarich d'amo Yisrael b'shalom.
Amen. Well, we continue. We close off Shacharit on page 138 with Kaddish Shalem.
Yigdav yigdash mi Rabba.
Amen.
Rabba di Rabba di Rabbi Chod v'chod 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 Yisrael. Bagla v'izman kariv v'yimrel. Amen. Yesh mi Rabba v'vorach. Yolam alam e'olmaya. Yidbarach. Yidbar v'ishtabach. Yidbar v'nomenasir. Yidbar v'nomenasir. Yidbar v'nomenasir.
Brechu.
Elam yikabercha dav v'shivada. Tulcha dav nechmata. Dav Rabba d'ma v'yimrel.
Amen.
Yidkabel sodal v'odam d'chol Yisrael. Kodam v'chon v'shmaya v'yimrel.
Amen. Amen.
Shalom Mirama, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael v'Yimrel. Amen.
You may be seated for a little bit. We're continuing on page 139 with the Torah service.
In Kamacha v'Elohim Adonai, in Kasecha, Malechudecha, Malecha, Kol Olamim, V'memshadecha b'chodor v'dor. Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Imach, Ve'alav Adonai Oziyamo Yitin, Adonai Yivarech, Edamo Vashalom. Avarach Avim, Iti Vavitzanecha, Et Zion, Tivnecha Obaham, Yerushalayim, Tivnecha Obaham, Yerushalayim, Kivecha levad badachnu,
Melech Elam v'Nisan, Don Olami.
Vayibi Sahara, Vayomer Mahajeh, Kulma Adonai, V'yafusu Oivecha,
V'yanusu misanecha necha ki mitzion Peisei Torah ki mitzion Peisei Torah v'yevar Adonai Shalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Torah Torah L'amo Yisrael Kedushato. And we continue on page 140, second paragraph, Ben al-Rachetz. Isha Anarachez, Be'anarachez. Isha Yakira Mecha Kadama Takli Bibioraita Tashmi Veshalim Delibi Barech Olamach Yisrael Avulechaim Melishlam Amen. The ark is closed, and we repeat after the Chazan on page 141.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gad Adonai, Gad Shema.
Echad Eloheinu, Gad Shema.
Gadol Adonai Iti, Uneromima, Shemo Yacheda, Lecha Adonai, Vagidola, Vagidola, Vanivet, Vanizahor, Yichol Shamayim, Vaharet, Yichol Shamayim, Vaharet, Adonai, Vamamahata,
Romanu, Romanu, Eloheinu, V'ishtachavu, V'ishtachavu, Kadoshu, Romanu, Romanu, Adonai Eloheinu, V'ishtachavu, V'ishtachavu. Zev is now doing the satellite tour. Okay. The Torah is seated. You can be seated. I was looking through what happened this week in the history of the Jewish people. I'm going to skip a few of them. They're just not nice. But on December the 6th, 1771, the first Yiddish newspaper was published in Germany. It was called, and excuse my German, Die Erfurter Privilegierte Zeitung. There, that should be clear to everyone who speaks Yiddish. Yeah.
It just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
It just, it's mellifluous.
Yeah.
Okay, December 7th, besides being what we think of when we think of December the 7th, and Delaware Day, the day that the first state signed the Constitution. Only people from Delaware know this. And also, there's a birthday in 1915 of an actor. Lou's here. He's the most consistent winner. The only thing I really remember concretely of this actor is that he was in On the Waterfront. No, I don't think it was Yul Brynner. It was Eli Wallach. Okay. And then there's a burning at the stake. Oh, here's another birthday. In 1920, on December the 9th, another actor was born. This one, we associate him as an aging actor who found his Judaism later in life.
Kirk Douglas?
Exactly. See, I give too many clues. That's.
What was his real name, though? Wasn't it like
Oh,
Esther or something?
yeah, it was like Bernie Schwartz was Tony Curtis. But he had a real Yiddish name, Kirk Douglas did. Okay, now on December the 10th, 1891, Nellie Sachs, a poet and winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, was born. That places her in a class with Bob Dylan. And this is ominous, but on December the 11th, which is today, in the year 321, the Emperor Constantine the Great made the first documented mention of the Jews in Germany. And I'm glad. I cannot remember those things. Okay. Well, I'm going to be taking it a little easy today. It's my first time back. It's nice to be back. Actually, I like to mention the word back. But as far as the Parsha is concerned, today is Vayigash. And this is such a good story. The Joseph story is just it's a great story. It's got intrigue, danger, sex, violence, getting out of prison, a Cinderella story as Joseph climbs up of an Egyptian jail to become the second most powerful man in the most powerful country in the world. I mean, this is a story that is so improbable, you practically can believe it happened. It's definitely a great story. It's, some people call it the first novel ever written. We are with the characters here in a way that we see almost nowhere else in the Bible. We recognize these characters. We know them as our own people. We're even privy to some of their thoughts, which is an early use of this literary device. Usually, in most literature, up until the Middle Ages, the inner thoughts of a person were not part of the literature. But we see what Joseph's conflicts are, how he can barely constrain himself with emotion. But we don't quite get everything. We don't know why, for example, Joseph, after achieving his high position in Egypt, doesn't contact his father to let him know he's doing okay. Commentators have spilled a lot of ink on that. Was he afraid that the message might get intercepted? Was he worried that he might find out his father was in on the kidnapping and the sale of himself? After all, who sent him to go meet his brothers? We don't know, but there's lots of choices, especially in the Midrash. Another puzzlement comes today in our Parsha. After Joseph reveals his true identity to his brothers, there's a very emotional moment at the very beginning of the whole Parsha. He reveals himself. There's this big, well, who are you? You can't really be. Oh, you are. And then Joseph sends his brothers back to Canaan to get their father Jacob. Tell him the good news. His long-lost son Joseph is still alive and is, in fact, ruler over all of Egypt. Now, would you believe it if someone came and told you that? Why not, right? At first, Jacob does not believe it, but then he looks at all the things that were sent by the Pharaoh of the day, and I can just see my kid Eitan, when he was young, he said, "Dad, look at all this stuff." And he's convinced, but he doesn't feel good about it. He doesn't feel at ease with it. He went reluctantly on this return trip to Egypt. We know that he was uncomfortable with it because Along the way, they stop at Beersheba, where he offered sacrifices to God. And in a night vision, God called to Jacob and he said to him, don't be afraid to go down to Egypt. If you look at page, if you want to see this in action, it's on page 280 in the Chumash, chapter 46, verse 4. Verse 3 is the one I just said. Don't be afraid to go down to Egypt. And it says there, anybody want to read that out loud in English? Go ahead. 4.
I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I myself will also bring you back, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes.
That's an old custom that when someone's passed away and their eyes are open, the oldest son will close the eyes of the body. I myself, Anochi ered imcha, I will go down with you, Mitzrayim, toward Egypt. Ve'anochi alcha, I will raise you up, gam alo, and that's the tricky part. I will bring you back. I will bring you back up. Now, what I learned in rabbinical school is that you have a word like olah or aliyah, and you have the verb form, which is gam alo, also going up. And what they mostly make out of these additional things is it's an absolute infinitive used for emphasis. Well, what's the emphasis here? What are they emphasizing? That is addressed in a number of commentaries. There's always been a conundrum in my mind between two sayings, very popular sayings. The first is, all things come to the one that waits. Patience is a virtue. And if you wait and time things just right, you'll be rewarded. And I will be if I can separate my pages. You'll have great good fortune if you just wait it out. But against this is another saying that says, he who hesitates is lost. Seize the moment, waste no time. Wisdom, of course, is knowing which one to heed at what time. The Torah is a book of instructions, after all, and our Jacob seems betwixt and between on this. Should I stay or should I go? Should I be happy about this or should I not? The lyricist Robert Hunter puts it well when he said, the wheel is turning and you can't slow down. You can't let go and you can't hold on. You can't go back and you can't stand still. If the thunder don't get you, then the lightning will. You got nowhere to go and no choices. Or as Rabbi Kenny Rogers put it, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. So Jacob must have been afraid to go, right? Why else would God say, don't be afraid? So a lot of commentators, all across the history of commenting, have dealt with this verse. Everybody from Rashi on up to the modern commentators like Jonathan Sachs and James Kugel, they've all dealt with this. But in addition, and somewhere in between there, we have a couple of early first century of the Common Era commentators. Let's take a look at some of that. Why else would God tell him, don't be afraid? Ancient commentators were puzzled by these words. After all, Jacob had been told that his son was in charge of the entire country of Egypt. What was there for him to be afraid? What was there to be afraid of? Some interpreters suggested that Jacob's real worry concerned his children. Once established in the lush landscape of Goshen, where the living was easy, would they not be tempted into sin, especially the sin of assimilation? Would they ever want to go back to the rough and tumble agrarian existence that was their life in Canaan? How are you going to keep them down on the farm once they've seen Goshen? Philo of Alexandria, a guy who lived in Egypt, he was early first century, and a biblical commentator said, after hearing that Joseph had invited him to Egypt Jacob's joy was joined with fear in his soul at the prospect of his leaving his ancestral way of life, for he knew how natural it is for young people to go astray, and how being away from one's country can be an invitation to sin, especially in Egypt. You know, what happens in Goshen stays in Goshen. You know. Goshen's north. It's like you got Egypt here, that bilateral line. Cairo's about there, and Goshen's north of that. That's my recollection. You know, there's a map in the back of the Chumash. If you find it, let us know. Now, where was I? So, and then Philo wraps up his comments by saying, the kids might be susceptible to sin, and that's why God appeared to Jacob in his sleep that night, saying, don't be afraid to go to Egypt. Similarly, about 50 years later, still in the late first century, Josephus, the Jewish historian, wrote, halting at Beersheba, Jacob offered sacrifices to God. However, he feared that by reason of the prosperity that was prevalent in Egypt, his sons might become so enamored of settling there that his descendants would never again return to Canaan to take possession of it as God had promised. Then God appeared to him to reassure him by name, saying, don't be afraid. So you can see in these passages the stereotypical assumption that Egypt, because it's got a lot of money and a lot of wealth, is going to trick and seduce these youngsters into staying there. So where do they get the idea? Well, it's from the verse that I said before. In the Midrash, there's a similar idea. In the verse that we looked at before that Charlene read, I myself will go down to Egypt, and I will also I'll bring you back up. And remember that bringing them back up is for emphasis. The olcha, was it olcha gam alo? I will surely raise you up, or I will raise you up a whole lot. So they took that to mean that, well, not only will I bring you back, but I'll bring your whole family back. Jacob was afraid that his descendants would settle down in Egypt, and that's why God commanded him and announced to him, but I'll bring you back, and I'll bring them also. Don't worry, Jacob, all your sons will come back from Egypt, just like you. Now the problem here, the Torah never says anything about all of Jacob's sons returning to Canaan, either dead or alive. And almost ever since, some Jews have questioned the necessity of living in Israel's ancestral homeland. We're not living in Israel's ancestral homeland right now. And because there's a dynamic between Israel and the diaspora. But many native-born Israelis say that they're quite content to be living in Los Angeles or Berlin or somewhere else where the money's good. There's more than a few young graduates who gotten an offer of employment that was too good to refuse. So they packed up their families, they head off to Silicon Valley or whatever, and very few of them stopped to ask Jacob's question, what if my children become so enamored of settling there that their descendants will never again return to Canaan? Canaan is Israel. And what does that mean for Canaan? What does it mean for Israel? Joseph, like Jacob, makes his brothers promise not to let his bones stay buried in Egypt. Both of them. Moses, now the brothers take Jacob back for a burial, but Joseph dies later. And he makes his brothers promise that he won't be staying there. You'll somehow get him back. And who gets him back? Moses. Moses takes the people out of bondage, but none of the brothers are alive then, but he makes sure that he gets the ossuary, the bone container of Joseph. None of the brothers are alive, but the tribe seemed to be intact. the tribal associations, the identity of belonging to a tribe seems to stay in place as they march through the desert for 40 years. There's even an arrangement in the Torah that tells you how the different tribes were arranged around the Mishkan, the Ark. And they get back to the land and they settle in the areas that are named for the brothers. That's why they're named that way. So maybe they did get used to life there. I mean, why didn't all the Jews in Babylon return to Judea once Cyrus the Great gave them the permission to do so? Exactly. They had lives. It's the same reason that not all the Jews in the world are making Aliyah. They have lives. We have lives. We're comfortable. Of course, that can backfire. We saw what happened in Germany. And that's why you need an Israel. Professor James Kugel is concerned with this. He's concerned with the brain drain, the young people leaving Israel and not coming back. And I just kind of want to assure him that there is and can be a vibrant life outside of the land of Israel, of the Jewish community. We can have a vibrant Jewish life outside of it. And it goes both ways. People make Aliyah to Israel. People come back from Israel. I know Jim and Jenny are very proud of Eric, who's living in Israel. And they're just as proud of Renee, who's living locally. Aaron came back. But he brought a very religious family with him. And that's part of what keeps the community vibrant here. As a matter of fact, so many of what we call innovations and advancements in Judaism didn't come from Israel. They came from outside Israel, from Babylon. The whole way that our service is built came from the Geonim in Babylon. All kinds of cultural things. I know one person who thought the accordion was so Israeli until they found out it was Hungarian. So, what was Jacob afraid of? That his sons might not come back. Maybe that was it. Maybe he's just afraid of the change. All changes are difficult. All beginnings are difficult. They take a struggle. We're going through some changes here. There will be a change in personnel. There'll be a change we've already gone through a change in location. We've adjusted pretty well, and we'll continue to do that. And don't be afraid, because with the trust in God and help from each other, we will make it through anything that is thrown at us. Shabbat Shalom. And now, our Torah reading begins. On page 283, just after the quote we saw. What's happened in the first part of the Parsha before we get to it? There was a cliffhanger at the end of last week where Benjamin was about to be sentenced to slavery, and Judah stepped up to the plate and at the beginning of our Parsha gave the most heartfelt delivery of a speech that's in the entire Bible. He goes out, he begs the man he doesn't know is Joseph to let his brother go. I'll take his place, he says, indicating that he's completely a different and more mature person than the guy who said when Joseph was in the pit, let's not kill him, let's sell him, we can make a shekel.
28 through 30,
Joseph's brothers have just been told they must leave their brother Benjamin with the mean Egyptian man that is actually their brother Joseph, long thought dead. Judah steps forward and gives the best speech in the Torah, convincing Joseph that he and his other brothers have changed, and now we're all honorable men. And Joseph then reveals his secret identity to them, and they're dumbstruck. Events move forward through their denouement, and the brothers are sent to Canaan to get their father with extravagant gifts for proof that Joseph is alive. And then we get a genealogy and an accounting for Jacob. and all the 70 souls that came with him. The first Aliyah on page 283, verse 28. Here we see the long-awaited reunion of Joseph and his father Israel in the land of Goshen where they will live. And Jacob says, "Now I can die, I've seen you alive."
ואז ויגיד וישחסים בבנמר אמן, הכל הבו גודל אלוהינו נלחבו לתורה, יעמוד כהן, יעמוד קרובין, בין מאיר הכהן כהן, רוח סנתן, תורה מרסה בקדושתו.
ואתם מדליקים עליכם, גם חיים כולכם היום.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני.
אמן. את יהודה שלח לפניו אל יוסף לרעות לפניו גושנה, ויבוא ארצה גושן, ויעשו יוסף מרכבתו, ויעל לקראת ישראל אביו גושנה, ויירא אליו, ויפול על צוואריו, ויבק עד צוואריו עוד, ויאמר ישראל אל יוסף, אבוט הפעם, אחרי ראיתי את פניך, כי עודך חי.
The next Aliyah,
אלוהינו מלך העולם. אשר נתן לנו תורה אמת. חיי עולם נוטה בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני. נותן התורה.
Amen. Yamud Levi.
well,
Yamud Yaakov ben Emmanuel HaLevi V'Sara Levi.
the next Aliyah, the Levi Aliyah, given to Mr. Levi himself, page 283, verse 31. Joseph is about to go tell Pharaoh that his brothers are here. He tells his brothers that when Pharaoh asks you what you do not say you are shepherds. The Egyptians hate shepherds. Say you raise livestock. And what happens in the next Aliyah, I'll just share with you now. The brothers go and meet Pharaoh. He asks them what they do, and they say, we're shepherds, like our father. And Joseph, of course, cringes. But right now we're on page 283, verse 31.
ברכו אל אדוני הברך.
Baruch Adonai Borach Le'olam Va'ed.
ברוך אדוני הברך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. אשר ברוך בנו מכל העמים. ונותן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Yosef elecha ve'el beit aviv elav vayira lefaro v'omra elav achai v'beit avi asher beretz Canaan ba'u elai v'anashim ro'ei hitzon ki anshe miknei hayu utzonam v'karam v'kol asher lahem heviu v'yah ki yikra lachem paro v'amar mamasechem v'amartem anshe miknei Hayu avadecha minareinu v'harata, gam anachnu gam avotenu, bavor teishvu be'eretz Goshen, ki toavat Mitzrayim kol ro'ei tzon.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher notan lanu Torah emet, v'chei olam nota b'tachenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yamot Shlishi. Yeah, just call it Shlishi.
Jim, I understand you got a birthday.
Someone told me that.
Did you remember who? Watch yourself. Watch yourself.
Yes, I do.
Jim, you're going to, when exactly is your birthday? Today?
No, December 10th.
December, yesterday.
Yesterday.
So you're already 90.
Right. In a day.
And a day. Don't discount that day. But there's an old saying in Yiddish, which I don't know how to say in Yiddish, but you should live to be 120. Say it again? Right. I don't want to say that because I don't want to limit you.
Thanks a lot.
But I just want to say that Jim was, the first time that I interviewed out here, Jim took Chai and me back to the airport. And we had a lovely discussion then, and it was just an exposure to what was going to be, I hope is regarded as a good friendship.
It was.
Misha Berach Avotenu Abraham Yitzhak Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel Leah Hu Yivarech et, what's your Hebrew name?
Yaakov?
Yaakov ben Halevi.
Then
Yaakov ben Emmanuel
Emmanuel
Halevi.
Halevi, שעלה היום לכבוד המקום, לכבוד התורה, לכבוד השבת, הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור אותו ואת כל משפחתו, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיו, עם כל ישראל אחיו ונאמר. May God, who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless Jim, who has been called to the Torah with reverence for God, the Torah, and Shabbat. And may the Holy One watch over him and the members of his entire family, wherever they are, bringing blessings and success to all his worthy endeavors. With the privilege of going up to Jerusalem for the festival, I hope you get a chance to do that soon. Together with our fellow Jews everywhere, and let us all say,
Amen. Semen double, mazel double, mazel double, semen double, mazel double, mazel double, semen double, mazel double, semen double. I'd like to share with you. As you know, it's a tradition here to, on special occasions, to do a gematria, and so I prepared one for you. So, now, the way I see it, you don't get to be 90 years old without learning certain life's lessons and living by them. So I've kind of focused on that a little bit. So I have to imagine when you faced challenges in life, you were able to go with the flow. And you understood adversity today would be like water under the bridge tomorrow. And you accomplished many great things in your life. You served the community with honor and distinction. I don't know if many of you know this, but Jim was president of Temple Beth Emet in 1994, and you were instrumental in my coming to this congregation as your cantor, along with Ken Levin in the back. And so you could say that was a watershed for TBE. And you're also a man of principle. We all know, come hell or high water, you defend what you think is right. So as you can see, I'm celebrating your life today by focusing on a word whose gematria is 90, and frankly, without which none of us or any living creature on the surface of the earth could survive. And this is water. Water. Mayim, mem, yud, mayim. 40, 10, and 40. Water, it equals 90. So just like water is our biological life force, your life force has been one of good, of joy, of inspiration and meaning for your family and for your community, for your congregation, and for myself. So water is such an appropriate word for you on this occasion. It means 90, represents, like I said, certain key things in your life and upbringing. And I know that as a young man, you were a swimmer. I remember those stories you used to tell about. I used to swim in the river. And so, and now that you're 90, of course, no one can tell Jim that he's wet behind the ears, right? So, in conclusion, may you go from strength to strength. May we all have the privilege of your company and friendship. May have Esrim and beyond 120, and let us say, Amen.
In Israel, a popular saying is Ad mea kit esrim.
Right.
You should live to be 100 and feel like you're 20. If you can feel like you're 20 at 100, you have ways to go.
Yeah.
That's
right. Mazel tov. Yamot shlishi, yamot tov ben Yehuda, shlishi. Okay, just a second. Right here.
Baruch et Adonai Hamborach. Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Voed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bochar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayavo Yosef, v'agil lefaro, vayomer, aviva achai v'tzonam v'karam, v'chol asher lahem ba'o meretz Canaan, v'inam meretz Goshen, v'miktzei echav lakach chamisha nashim, v'yatzigim livnei paro. Vayomer paro el echav mama asechem, vayermu el paro, roe hitzon, avadecha gam anachnu gam avotinu, vayermu el paro, Lagor ba'aretz, ba'anu, ki ein mireh, v'adson asher lavadecha, ki chavit harav be'eretz Canaan, v'yata yeshvu navadecha be'eretz Goshen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayilom nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen.
Okay,
All right,
Mazel
so
tov.
verse 5. Gamod, Revi'i, Talmud, Semaliba bat Beryl. Semaliba bat Beryl Berivka.
Thank you for your comments.
Revi'i, we'll begin
There'll
on
be
verse
more.
5.
Not today, though. What are we on, the fourth Aliyah?
What is it?
With the-
Okay.
We're on page 285, verse 7. Here's where Pharaoh meets Jacob, and Jacob tells him, don't take this personally, Jim, that he's 137 years old.
Yeah, we're going to start on verse 5. I ended a little early last time, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, we're on verse 5,
Yeah,
okay.
but we'll take it through that for sure. Okay, so
Baruch hu Adonai hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
let me find, make sure I'm at the spot. Yeah. Okay. Vayomer paro Yosef lemor avicha v'achicha ba'o elecha, eretz Mitzrayim lavanecha hi, b'mei tahava haaretz, hoshiv et avicha v'et achecha, yeshvu be'eretz Goshen, v'im yadata, v'yishbama anshe chayil, v'sam tam sarei mikne al asher li, vayave Yosef et Yaakov aviv, gamidei livnei paro, v'yarech Yaakov et paro, Vayomer Paro el Yaakov, Kama yemei shnei chayecha. Vayomer Yaakov el Paro, Yemei shnei megarei, shloshim u'me'at shana me'at v'rayim. Hayu yemei shnei chayai, v'lo hizigu et yemei shnei chayei avotai, b'mei megureihem. V'yorech Yaakov et Paro, vayitzei lifnei. Is that the end? Vayitzei Milifnehi, is that the end of it? No, did you say don't say? Okay. Milifnehi paro, v'yo shev Yosef, et aviv et achav, vayitzeh lahem achuza beretz Mitzrayim, v'metiv haaretz beretz Ramses, kasher tzviva paro, v'chagel Yosef et aviv et achav, v'et kol beit aviv lechem. Is that it? Lefi hatav. Okay, that was wrong. 'Cause I don't have my ruach. Go ahead.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen. I'm missing the verses. I don't have the luach with me. So
You want to use the, I'm not using it right now.
no, it's all right. Yeah. See, I usually I can follow the breakdown through this book, but someone took it, so it's hard for me sometimes to figure out what it is.
Yeah, so if anybody walked off with a luach, please return it. No questions will be asked.
Yamud Chamishi, Yamud Ari Ben Moshe Chamishi.
The fifth Aliyah begins on page 286 with verse 11. The brothers settle in Goshen. The famine begins as Joseph predicted when he interpreted Pharaoh's dream.
And the Egyptians exploit the famine to gain land and power.
We're beginning on verse 13.
Baruch hu Adonai havarach.
Baruch Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chabanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen.
Amen v'lechem ed mechol haaretz ki chavit harav me'od. V'hatela eretz Mitzrayim eretz Canaan mipnei harav. V'lekid Yosef et kol ha'kesef hamnitzav eretz Mitzrayim v'eretz Canaan b'shever asher heim sorim. V'yaveh Yosef et ha'kesef beta paro. V'yitom ha'kesef me'eretz Mitzrayim me'eretz Canaan. V'yavo chol Mitzrayim el Yosef lemar. Havalanu lechem v'lamanamu negdecha ki afeis kasef. Vayomer Yosef havu miknechem v'nalachem miknechem im afeis kasef. Vayaviu et miknehem el Yosef vayiten lahem. Yosef lechem basuzim v'miknei atzot v'miknei abakar v'chamorim v'yenahalim balechem b'chol miknehem b'shana hahi. Vatito mashanahi vayavo elav mashana sheni v'ernu lo nichachad me'adoni kim taham ha'kesef miknei ha'behema el adoni lo nishar lifnei adoni bilti gam gviatini v'admatini lama namut me'enecha gam anachnu gam admatinu kini otanu v'admatinu belechem v'nieh anachnu v'admatinu avadim V'faro v'tein zera v'nicheh v'lo namud v'adamaha lo teisham.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Yamod Abraham ben Ari v'basha shishi.
Did you end on the end of verse 19?
Now we're going to start now. We're going to begin on verse 20.
Verse 20, okay. Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to be seen. On verse 20, on page 287, here Joseph consolidates his power over Egypt, one town at a time, leading up to a situation where all of Egypt will become serfs, servants to the government, basically. And this is the seeds of why the Egyptians did not like the Hebrews at the time. And eventually enslaved them. Pharaoh didn't like them. He knew he was having a popular moment when he said, let's make the Hebrews into slaves. And this is where it starts.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai havarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayiken Yosef et kol admat Mitzrayim leFaro ki machul Mitzrayim isadehu ki chazak alehem rav v'diyarez leParo v'etam havir oto le'arim mitzegavo Mitzrayim vad kitzehu rahag admat hakohanim lo kanagi chok lakohanim meid Paro v'ichlel et chulukam asher nata lahem Paro Akein lo machu et admata lo machreho et admata.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Amud Shvi'i Amud Yitzchak ben Pinchas Shvi'i.
The seventh Aliyah is going to start on page 288 with verse 23. The people are very grateful to be alive, even as serfs to Pharaoh, and his brothers prospered in the land of Goshen.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
ויאמר יוסף אל העמים, קניתי אתכם היום ואת אדמתכם לפרעה, לכם זרע וזרעתם את האדמה, והיה בתשובות ונתתם חמישי לפרעה, וארבע הידות יהיה לכם לזרע השדה ולך לכם ולאשר בבתיכם לאכול את אפכם. ויאמרו החייתנו נמצאים בני אדוני והיינו עבדים לפרעה. וישם אותה יוסף לחוק עד היום הזה על אדמת מצרים לפרעה לחומש, רק אדמת הכהנים לבדם והייתה לפרעה. וישב ישראל בארץ מצרים בארץ גושן וחזו בה ויפרו וירבו מאוד.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
Yeah. The list is in your bulletin. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Ishebeira imotenu mikar haberacha lovotenu. Bless those in need of healing, with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Yidgada Vidgada Shemei Rabba V'yamad Yirach Yerudhei V'yamelech Machudhei V'chayechon V'yomechon V'chayidecho Beit Yisrael Bagala Uv'izmagari V'imreu Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam me'ol maya Yidbarach V'yishtabach V'yidbar V'yitman V'yitnazi V'yitadar V'yitalev Shemedi Kudejah Le'yehi Lamingo Birlachata V'shirata Tushmechata V'nechemata Damirat Mi'alma V'imreu Yamod Maftir, Yamod Nachum Ben Eliezer Esther, Maftir Chazak. You may be seated.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaBarach. Baruch Adonai HaBarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chabanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayirmu hechayitanu nimtzachei b'nei Adoni vayinu avadim lefaro. Vayasem ota Yosef lechok ad hayom hazeh admat Mitzrayim lefaro lachomish rak admat hakohanim lebadam lo hayta lefaro vayeshev Yisrael beretz Mitzrayim beretz Goshen ve'achazu va vayifru vayirbu me'od.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai,
I'll
noten
bring mine in from
Torah.
Amen. Yaman Magbiya. Tamara Golele.
Mahila.
Vizon HaTorah Eretz HaMoshe Livnei Bnei Yisrael B'yad Adonai B'yad Moshe.
Okay. As the Torah is seated, you can be seated. The Haftorah today starts on page 291 from the book of Ezekiel. Here the prophet uses the imagery of the stick of Joseph and of Ephraim, Joseph's son, to say there will be a time when all the families of the nation will be together again as they were when we all went down to Egypt with Jacob. There will become a time when our greater family, our clan, our people will be unified under God's kingdom.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzav v'divrehem anemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'Torah u'v'Moshe abdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'b'yei ha'emet b'tzedek. Vayehi dvar Adonai Eli lemor v'ata ben Adam kach lecha eitz echad uchtov alav liudav livnei Yisrael chavirav ulekach eitz echad uchtov alav liosef eitz Ephraim v'chol beit Yisrael chavirav V'karav otam echad el echad lechad le'etz echad v'ayu lachadim biyadecha v'cha asher yomru elecha b'nei amcha lemor halo tagid lanu ma'ele lach daber aleihem Koamar Adonai Elohim Hinei Ani Lokeach Et Eit Yosef Asher Biad Ephraim B'Shivtei Yisrael Chavirav V'natati Otam Alav Et Eit Yehuda V'asitim le'etz echad v'hayu echad biadi v'hayu haitzim asher tichtov aleihem biadchad leinehem v'daber aleihem koamar Adonai Elohim Hinei ani lokeach et bnei Yisrael מבין הגויים אשר הלכו שם, וקיבצתי אותם מסביב, והבאתי אותם אל אדמתם, ועשיתי אותם לגוי אחד בארץ, בערי ישראל, ומלך אחד יהיה לכולם למלך, ולא יהיו עוד לשני גויים, ולא יחצו עוד לשתי ממלכות עוד, ולא יטמאו עוד בגילוליהם ובשיקוציהם ובכל פשעיהם, והושעתי אותם מכל מושבותיהם אשר חטאו בהם, וטיהרתי אותם והיו לי לעם, ואני אהיה להם לאלוהים. ועבדי דוד מלך עליהם, ואחד echad yeh lechulam. ובמשפטי ילכו, בחוקותי ישמרו, ויעשו אותם. וישבו על הארץ, אשר נתתי לעבדי ליעקב, אשר ישבה בה אבותיכם, וישבו עליה המה. ובני בניהם עד עולם, ודוד עבדי נשיא להם לעולם. וחרתי להם ברית שלום, ברית עולם יהיה אותם, ונתתי ביתי אותם, ונתתי את מקדשי בתוכם לעולם. והיה משכני עליהם, והייתי להם לאלוהים, והמה יהיו לי לעם. וידעו הגויים כי אני אדוני מקדש את ישראל בהיות מקדשי בתוכם לעולם. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל עולמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, אל הנאמן האומר ויעשה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ונאמנים דבריך, ודבר אחד מדבריך, אחור לא ישוב ריקם. כי אל מלך נאמן ורחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הנאמן בכל דבריו. רחם על ציון כי בית חיינו, ולעולבת נפש תושיע, במהרה בימינו, ברוך אתה אדוני, משמח ציון בבניה.
אמן.
שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו, באליהו הנביא עבדך, ובמלכות בית דוד משיחך, במהרה יבוא ויגר ליבנו, על כיסו לא ישב זר, ולא ינחלו עוד אחרים את כבודו, כי בשם קדשך נשבעת לו, שלא יכבה נרו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך שמו,
מגן דוד.
אמן.
על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים, ועל יום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך, בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת.
Throw candy, throw candy. Nice job, Ken, as usual. We return to our Sidurim, page 148. And we'll start at the last paragraph on the page. May this land, under your providence, be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say, Amen. Lo yisagoy el goy cheret, lo yilmedu od milchama, lo yisagoy el goy cheret, lo yilmedu od milchama, v'nomar Amen. Makor Chaim, source of all life, we ask for a quick end to hostilities around the world, domestic and foreign, and the swift and safe return of our young men and women to their homes. And let us all say, Amen. Prayer for the state of Israel, page 149. Avinu Sheba Shemayim, Tzor Yisrael v'goalo, Barechem Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Smichat Gulatenu.
הגן אליה בעברת חסדך, ופרוס עליה סוכת שלומך, ושלח אורך ויעמידך על ראשיה שריה ויועציה, ותקנם בעצה טובה מלפניך. חזק את ידי מגיני ארץ קודשנו, והנחילם אלוהינו ישועה, ויתרת ניצחון תיאטרם. ונתת שלום בארץ, ושמחת העולם ליושביה, ונאמר אמן. And it's Ashrei time, page 151.
Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Od Yahalu Chasela.
Ashrei ha'am shekach lo, Ashrei ha'am sh'Adonai Eloham.
Tila leDavid Armim Kalo, Kaka Melech Avrakashim Kale Olam Vaed.
Yom Avrachecha, V'alula Shimcha Le'olam Va'ed.
Gadol Adonai Mekula Be'ol, V'ligdula To'ei Cheker.
Dor lidor Shabbat Masecha, Uvrotecha Yagidu.
Hadar Kevo Chodecha, V'difrein Diflotecha Sika.
Ve'zuz Nonotecha Yomeru, Ugidulacha Saprena.
Zekerav Tukaya Biu, V'sikarecha Yiraneinu.
Chanun v'rachum Adonai, Erech Apayim Ugdal Chesed.
Tov Adonai Lakov, Rakamav Kol Masaf.
Yiduch Adonai kol maasecha, v'chasidecha yivarchucha.
Kevo Mahutcha Yomeru, Gevurucha Yetaperu.
L'hodi al bnei Adam gvurotav, u'chevod adar malchuto.
Mahutcha Mahukolamim, U'emchatcha Bekol Dor Vador.
Somech Adonai l'chol hanoflim, v'zokech l'chol haflufim.
Eine Koeleka Yisaberu, Vatanotin Lahem El Klambito.
Poteach et yadecha, u'masbiya l'chol charetzon.
Sadik Adonai Bekol Tevacha, Vekasi Bekol Masaf.
Rov Adonai l'chol chorav, l'chol asher yikru v'emet.
Ritzoni Yav Yaseh, Veshaltan Shmaf Yoshim.
Shomer Adonai et kol ovav, v'et kol rishayim yashmid.
Tilad Adonai Yedaber Pi, Vivareko Basar Shem Kocho Lelam Vaed.
V'anachnu morech Yah, me'acha v'ad olam. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, it is God, Shem Adonai, Baruch Ha'eretz, L'shamayim, V'yarech Erev, V'ilalecho, Ha'zira, V'nei Yisrael, Hallelujah,
Hallelujah.
Miss Morle Dahavi. Adonai B'nei Avuladonai Kavod Va'od. Avuladonai Kevod Shemo. Ishtach Avuladonai
Hadrat Kodesh.
Adonai Ohamayim El Kavod Yirim. Adonai Ohamayim Rabim. Adonai Va'akoa. Kol Adonai Be'adar. Kol Adonai Shomer Harasim. V'shomer Adonai Harasim. Varkidim Kamo Egel Levano. V'Sirio Kamo Ve'Reimim.
Kol Adonai,
Eish.
Kol Adonai, Yachil Midbar.
Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh.
Kol Adonai, Yechol Elayalo.
Vayehasof Yerod V'chei Kalo Kulo Mer Kavod.
Adonai Mabul Yasha. Ev Adonai Melech Leolam. Adonai Os Amoitei.
Adonai Yivarech,
Evanol Vashalom.
Hey,
Teshuva Kadesh
Kodesh
Yameinu Kadesh. The ark is closed, but we remain standing for the Chatzi Kaddish on page 155 that ends the Torah service and takes us into the Musaf.
Yid God Havi Kadash Shemei Rabba Bialamad Vrachirut Hevi Amelich Machutei Bechayecha V'yomecha V'chayidecha B'id Israel Bagala Bagala V'vid Mahakari V'imrel Yesh Mei Rabba Mevorach Li'olam lo me'al maya Yidbarach v'yishdabach V'yidbar v'yitman v'yitnazli v'yidhadar V'yidaleh v'yidalal Shemei Kudisha V'yehila mingal berachada v'shirahada Tuzbechata v'nechemata Damiran b'yalma v'imrel.
We will pray together on page 156, B, and the Kedusha on 157, then we'll finish silently from 157 to 161.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah El Gadol HaGibor VeHanora El Elyon Gamel Chazadim Tovim V'ganei HaGahal V'zacher Chosei Avahot V'mei Goel Livnei V'nehem V'mahan Shemo B'yahava Melech Ozel Vokin V'mashiach Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'magen Sarah Adagi Bor Le'olam Adonai Mechemiti Mada V'loshia Mashiv HaRuach Marid HaGashem Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed B'chayim Eidim B'rachamim Rabim Samech Naflim V'ravech Olim Umadir Asurim Umekayim Emunatah Lishenei Avar Michamocha B'gevurot Umira Melach Melech Mimit Umichayah Umashliach Yeshua V'nemanat al Chayot Mitim Baruch atah Adonai B'chayei Hamitim Na'arizecha V'nagdishecha Kizosiach Sarvei Kodesh Hamakdishim Shimcha B'kodesh Kakadu Ayad Nevi'echa V'karazeh El Zeh V'yamar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzevaot Melech haaretz Givavodo Givavodo Mahali Olam Mishari Dav Shalim Zelazeh Hayim Yigam Givavodo V'yom Baruch Yomeru Baruch Givavodo Adonai B'imkomo 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 Liven B'rachamim V'yachonam Am Yachadim Shemo Eher V'avoger B'choyam Damid Pamayim Yava Shema Omrim Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai
Avinu, Malkeinu, Moshienu, Yashmienu, Sheni, Ani Adonai Elohechem,
Baruch Atah Adonai
Baruch Shemo.
Ha'el HaKadosh.
158 to 161. We mark the end of Musaf and are heading into our concluding prayers on page 181 with Kaddish Shalem.
Amen. Yesh mei rabba mivora. Yolam alam almaya. Yitbarach. Yitbarach v'shtabach. Yitbarach v'menaseh. V'narav 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 v'narav
Brichu.
Elam yikabech dav v'shivada. Jumla dav nachmada. Dam ram alama v'gimrel.
Amen.
Tid kabel soton v'hodon l'chol Yisrael. Chadam, Avon Vishmai, Vegimaru.
Amen.
Peace, Love, Love, Vishmai, Vachaim, Ali, Vakal Israel, Vegimaru.
Amen.
Hoseh, Shalom, Ibrahim.
Uyase shalom aleinu.
Ve'alko Israel. Ve'imru.
Amen. Yase shalom. Shalom aleinu. Yako Yisrael. Yase
Shalom. Shalom aleinu. Yalko Yisrael. Amen.
Page 182, Ein Keloheinu.
In Keloheinu, in Kadoneinu, in Gemagenu, in Moshiachenu, me, in Keloheinu, me, in Kadoneinu, me, in Gemagenu, me, in Moshiachenu, in Keloheinu, in Kadoneinu, in Gemagenu, in Moshiachenu, Nada, El Eloheinu, Nada, El Adonai, Nada, El Magenu, Nada, Le Moshiachenu, in Keloheinu, in Kadoneinu, in Magenu, in Moshiachenu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonai, Baruch Magenu, Baruch Moshiachenu, in Keloheinu, in Kadoneinu, in Magenu, in Moshiachenu, Atahu, Eloheinu, Atahu, Adonai, Atahu, Magenu, Atahu, Moshiachenu, in Keloheinu, in Kadoneinu, in Magenu, in Moshiachenu, Atahu, Shegiru, Avo, Teinu, Leva, Anecha, et Kitoret, Hasamim, in Keloheinu, in Kadoneinu, in Magenu, in Moshiachenu.
Page 183, Elenu L'Shabech.
Alinu l'shabech Adonai, Latignu l'Yosef Rishit, Shelo Asadik Yaratzon, Velo Samara, Vishpemon Adama, Shelo Satzaginu Gahem, Vigor Alinu, Kechol Amonam, Vanachnu Korim, Mishkan Havim Umorim, Lifnei Melech, Machi HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Noten Shamayim ve'Yosei Haaretz, Adavim Ha'om Ha'shamarim B'ma'al, Shvin HaDuzav, Shvin HaDuzav, V'gavim Elohim, Hu Eloheinu, Kagatu b'toratecha, v'chayimach le'olam va'ed,
Ne'emar Adonai Melech al kol haaretz, Yom hahu v'yom hahu, Adonai echad u'shemo, Shemo echad. You may be seated. In solemn testimony to the unbroken faith which links one generation to the next, In just one moment, those in mourning or observing Yortzeit will rise to praise God's name with the words of the Mourner's Kaddish on page 184. But first, Yortzeits observed this week include Henry Berger, Mary Berger, Gay L. Blywise, Florence H. Cohen, Harry Abraham Davis, Frank Fay, Mark Feiner, Alex Gord, Joseph Greenberg, Benjamin Holly, Jean Hawk, Alfred Heller, Robert Ivor, Jean Helen Kaplitz, Bert Klatzker, Lawrence Korn, Morris Krzepicki. Krzepicki? No, it's not good. Regina Levy, Sadie W. Lewis, Louis Lippman, George Loeb, Pearl S. Lyon, Bernard Leonard Mann, Bernard Lewis Nedler, Ray Rodman, Molly Silverman, Benjamin Singer, Dr. Irving Sternhill, Gary Tilzer, Lillian Jacobs Wachman, Ethel Weinberg, and Morris Weitz. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 184. Yitkadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, b'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayei chon v'yomei chon v'chayei l'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kari v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach li'olam u'lomei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shmeid kudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiron b'yoma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. And we rise for Kiddush.
V'shabiru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asod et ha-Shabbat, v'doru damrit alav, be'egni u'v'menei Yisrael oti, v'ahalam ki shesh adamim, Hasadonai, and Hashamayim et haaretz, uvayom hashvi, Shabbat v'yinavash, Hakim mirach, v'naidim ha-Shabbat v'akadeshehu, Sav Raimon and Rabbanan Rabbatai, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher kiddushanu, mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Shabbat Shalom. I want to thank everyone who participated in the service. I'm Hardy Mazel Tov, and happy birthday to you, Jim. And before I do mine, I want Lou to give a special announcement.
So, many of you are aware, we always have our Zoom happy hour on Thursdays. This Thursday, we're going to have a special guest, which is Howard Reich. Howard Reich is the writer and producer of a film that we're currently streaming. It's available for you for streaming through Wednesday. So you should have gotten an email from the temple, which has the link to the streaming and the password necessary to view the film. Then on Thursday at 7 p.m. for our happy hour, if you join us, we'll have Howard there to do a Q&A. Howard happens to be my brother-in-law. He's a retired jazz critic and classical music critic from the Chicago Tribune. And this film, for those of you who've seen it, it's a very inspirational piece about a gentleman who lost the use of his right hand, and at an elderly age, people became aware of his talent for playing the piano with his left hand. The name of the film is For the Left Hand. So if you have the link, please watch the movie. I know you'll enjoy it.
Thanks, Lou. Well, also, most of you should have received by now a special flyer we send out about a special Shabbat service in Oneg honoring Rabbi Berman, Friday, December 31st, 2021, and it'll be at 6 p.m. in the chapel. Also, earlier you got a flyer about giving your well wishes for the reflective journal for Rabbi Berman. Send your good wishes, thoughts, remembrances now, and RSVP also for our farewell reception on January 9th. Both the responses need to be done by January 2nd. So we have a little less than a month, but you still have plenty of time. We also need your pictures. If you have any pictures from any events at the temple, please contact Jack Sikowski or the office. And we don't want hard copies. We'd rather have it through the computer, so call the office if you need more information. Lou mentioned about our happy hour this week, but even though the other weeks we have other programs, this past week we had, the Wilkoff's What's Up, and it was very, very engaging. So I invite you all to make sure you watch theirs every other week. Remember, we serve a light lunch after services, and you need to have an RSVP so we know how much food to make. And next, we have the Orange County Jewish Coalition for Refugees is holding an online auction. Oh, it's still going on. The proceeds will help Afghan families resettle in Orange County. The auction already started on Sunday, November 28th, and it continues till tomorrow, December 12th. So you still have...
I think it's going to be extended another week.
Okay, great. Wonderful. What kind of things are they auctioning off, by the way? Do you know?
It's quite an assortment. There's, tickets to
Oh, okay.
the game and
Okay, that kind of stuff. Okay.
vacation in Costa Rica.
Great.
Judaica.
Okay. And is there a link how to get, where to look it up?
Yeah, I think there should be flyers out
Okay, great.
there. It's in the email.
Okay, so there are flyers out by the door, should be. Okay, but also tomorrow, they're having a film at 10 a.m. called 40 Nickels. It's about the 1919 pogroms in Eastern Europe. I'm sure all of you know, but just so you don't forget, our transportation program is going strong. Call Jack Sikowski, Ken Levin, or Barry Klatzker for information. And just to remind you that we are having live services. You have to be in the seats here to be considered a minion. We have all kinds of other flyers and calendars available. Oh, here's something interesting for some of you ladies. Our Mahjong Cards for 2022 are available, $9 for regular, $10 large print. Please call Ethelyn Bernstein by December 31st. Okay, you're right. I apologize, David. I'm sorry. I forgot we used to have men play. So much the better. Don't forget to order yours, David. Oh, good. I have to remember. I read the announcement and I can't do it on Shabbat, so I forget. Okay, if you need to put anything in the announcements about an event or something, you need to call the office, talk to Becky. Any rabbinic services you need, talk to Karen. And as always, with the Mishaberach list, if you need to put someone on or take it off, please call the temple because every 6 weeks they update it. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I'd just like to say, it's For the Left Hand. That's the name of the movie, right? Yeah. It's an excellent film. I saw it on PBS. Is it still on PBS or?
No, it's streaming on a site that has been made available to us in the app.
Okay.
Which went out by email.
Okay, so For the Left Hand. Now, if you're watching a film called My Left Foot, you got the wrong link, okay? It's called For the Left Hand.
Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis is not in this one.
Yeah. It's worth your while, though, believe me.
So page 187?
187, here we go. Adonai lam asher malach b'terem koyin tzirivra li'it nasa v'chevso kol hazai melech shemo nikra v'yacharei gichlot hakol levado yimloch nara v'hu haya v'hu hove v'yeh b'tifara v'hu echad v'yeh sheni lehamshila lehachbira v'li reshit Beli tachlid velo haos v'hamisra v'hu eli v'chagwali v'tzor chevli b'yid sara v'hu nitzi u'manosli minarkosi b'yom ekra b'yadav kirochi b'yid ishad v'ha'ira b'imrochi givihati Adonai li v'lo ira Adonai lam asher malach B'terem koyin tzirivra li'it nasa v'chevso kol hazai melech shemo nikra. Here you go. Shabbat shalom. Sort of, not really. It was a request, but I've done it before.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
Well, don't thank me, thank David.
Oh, my, yeah.